Hello, and welcome to the Introduction to Rhetorical Analysis with Erin and Danielle. To start, what is a rhetorical analysis anyway? You may be wondering. Well, a rhetorical analysis is an essay that breaks a work of nonfiction into parts and then explains how the parts work together to create a certain effect, whether to persuade, entertain, or inform. When you look at it, you're basically dissecting your essay and analyzing it. Fortunately, though, it's not really alive. You can use the soapstone method to help organize your ideas. Well, what is a soapstone? It's an acronym for brainstorming your ideas in writing your essay. There is subject, occasion, audience, purpose, speaker, and tone. First is your subject. When looking at your essay, you should ask, what is the subject of this piece? What are the general topics or ideas in the text? Next is the occasion. What is the occasion of your essay, and what are the time, place, and setting of the piece? Next is the audience. Who is the audience, and to whom is the piece directed? Who's listening to your speaker? Next is the purpose. What is the purpose or reason this piece was written? Or why? You need to find at least 3 quotes or evidence to support this. Trust me, rule of 3 is a big one. Now is the speaker. Who is the speaker, and who is the voice that is telling your story, or just explaining the essay? And word of thumb, do not confuse this with the subject. Finally, the tone. What is the tone of the piece, or what is the attitude or emotional characteristics present in the piece? And please, for the sanity of your future AP language teacher and whoever reads your essay, do not stick with words such as the author's tone is happy, sad, or angry. Just elaborate.
The claim of a speaker's argument states the argument's main idea or position. Make sure you don't mix it up with the topic, which just tells you the subject of the writing, but doesn't really explain the author's position on it and can't be supported, like saying the subject is the environment or human rights. To identify the claim, ask yourself, what is the speaker trying to tell me, or what position do they take on the topic? To make a solid claim, the speaker or writer must sufficiently support the claim. This is where rhetorical strategies come in. You've probably heard about most of these strategies in school. 3 appeals of ethos, pathos, and logos, metaphors, puns, anaphora, etc. To find the strategies, search the text for words, phrases, or devices that make the claim more valid or appealing to the reader. On the AP Lang exam, you'll need to find 3 examples of each strategy, so look for the devices that pop up frequently within the text. This example is of Benjamin Franklin's petition from the Pennsylvania Society for the Abolition of Slavery. As I read the text, I annotated it by underlining and labeling some devices I noticed so I can go back to them while I'm organizing my analysis. On the AP exam, there will be a small paragraph outlining certain elements of soapstone. In this case, I already know that the speaker is Benjamin Franklin, the subject is slavery in the United States, his purpose is to ban slavery in the U.S., and his audience is the Senate and House of Representatives. It can be assumed that the general occasion is shortly after the creation of the Constitution and during the creation of laws to govern this nation. The rest can be determined by reading the text itself. In summary, the text talks about how Franklin believes that it is not right, based on the principles of liberty, that Africans and African Americans be enslaved and suffer. He also touches upon how several groups of people have come to believe this, and that it is unfair that white men be free, but black men and women be enslaved. This is where we get our claim. Ben Franklin's position on the topic of the enslavement of certain races is that it is unfair and contradicts the God-given right to be free and equal. You can now determine the tone of the piece as well. The tone is mostly determined to banish slavery, but also patriotic in the sense that it mentions liberty and freedom quite often, and moralistic in that Benjamin Franklin truly believes that it is morally incorrect to enslave people. The three main strategies that Benjamin Franklin used in this text that I found were religious references, an appeal to the people's sense of justice, and an appeal to the people's sympathies towards the enslaved. The first religious reference I found was saying that divine providence blessed institutions which worked for the freeing of the enslaved, which basically implies that God has blessed them, therefore the action of freeing slaves must be good. On the next page, it mentions how an almighty being created all mankind, which basically implies that if God made all people, we must be loved by him equally. Lastly, Franklin says that we are all designed for the enjoyment and happiness of the Christian religion, and that basically is really appealing because the primary religion at the time was Christianity. To appeal to the audience's sense of justice, Benjamin Franklin describes working against enslavement as a just and accurate conception of the true principles of liberty, and an expression of genuine liberty. And by saying that slavery is against these things, Franklin poses slavery as an enemy to the core ideas of their nation. Also, by saying that these blessings ought to be rightfully administered, Benjamin Franklin implies that it is unjust that these rights be taken away from people. To appeal to sympathy, Benjamin Franklin calls the enslaved unhappy men and uses words such as degraded into perpetual bondage and groaning and servile subjection to make the Senate and House feel the pain of the enslaved and make it real for them. Now it's time to write our thesis statement for the essay. The general outline of a thesis is the author argues the claim through the use of the three strategies that we found in the writing. Now let's insert the information we've found through soapstone and through reading the text into the thesis statement outline. The author, Benjamin Franklin, argues that the enslavement of certain races is unfair and contradicts God's intention for us to be free and equal through the use of the three strategies that we found: religious references, appeal to the American people's sense of justice and liberty, and an appeal for sympathy for the enslaved. Once you write your introduction with a complete thesis, write a body paragraph for each of the three strategies you identified, supporting each with the evidence we found in the text. Now you're all set to go.